What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at a fight that took place November 13th, 1947. Fight took place between future middleweight champion Jake LaMotta, the Bronx Bull, and Philadelphia's own Blackjack Billy Fox. And the reason why this fight is so interesting, controversial, is because Jake LaMotta admitted taking a dive in 1960. And I just want to go back to that fight for a moment. He was stopped in 4 rounds by Frank Fulmer. And Jake LaMotta was quite a character. I met him personally several times, and he was one of the greatest middleweights, I can tell you that. But Billy Fox, his name was Blackjack, was out of Philadelphia. He was originally from Oklahoma. He was born January 29, 1926. He stood 5 foot 10 inches. He was a light heavyweight. Had a fighting career record of 59 total bouts, 49 wins, 9 losses, 48 knockouts. He was stopped 6 times. And when he came into the Jake LaMotta fight, he was 37-1. He had all knockouts, and he was knocked out himself by Gus Lesnievich. He would eventually be knocked out by Gus Lesnievich, who was the future light heavyweight champion. Well, by this point, he was a former light heavyweight champion. Lost to him twice. He was knocked out by him twice. He lost to Tiger Ted Laurie and had 1 draw. Lost to Dick Wagner twice, and he was knocked out twice. He had lost to Joe Blackwood, who was stopped in the 4th round. And as for Jake LaMotta, he was known as the Bronx Bull. Born in Bronx, New York, July 10th, 1922. Had a fighting career record of 106 total bouts, 83 wins, 19 losses, 30 KOs. And he was stopped 4 times himself. He had 4 draws. What's interesting about Jake LaMotta, he's part of the 19 Loss Club. Him and Sugar Ray Robinson had lost 19 fights in their career. And they both signed to become professionals in 1940. Isn't that interesting? Now, Jake LaMotta began his professional debut in 1941. He got his license in 1940. So they were both licensed professionals in 1940. Was Jake LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson. And Sugar Ray Robinson in 1940 had his last amateur show, New York's Madison Square Garden, Golden Gloves, against Andy Nanelli. He weighed 133.25 pounds. He was in the lightweight division. Meanwhile, Jake LaMotta, in 1939, had won the Diamond Gloves. He was a light heavyweight when Ray Robinson in 1939 was a featherweight. And they would meet with one another in 1942. Robinson was moving up from lightweight to welterweight, and Jake LaMotta was a middleweight, but he was actually a light heavyweight. He just starved himself to get to middleweight. He would lose to Sugar Ray Robinson in 42. He would defeat him in 43 and then lose to him again in 43, 3 weeks later. But Jake LaMotta was just an undisciplined fighter. But he had the heart of a lion. He was an outstanding defensive fighter, as quiet as is kept. But I have him one of the greatest middleweights. No question about it. Now, the thing with Jake LaMotta, fought Tommy Bell March 14th, 1947. Tony Gennaro, June 6, 1947. Both in New York's Madison Square Garden. He was in the ring in Comiskey Park in Chicago. He would face Cecil Hudson. He weighed 155 pounds. September 3rd, 1947. But when he faced Billy Fox in New York's Madison Square Garden, he weighed 173.75 pounds. November 14th, 1947. Jake would be suspended in New York for not reporting a spleen injury found by Jake's personal physician, Dr. Nicholas Salamamo. Now, his doctor visited him on 3 separate occasions while he was in training because he kept complaining about his side hurting during the course of sparring. Dr. Vincent Nardiato, who was a ringside physician for the 20th Century Fox, has stated, in the investigation process, that had he known of Jake LaMotta's spleen injury, he had no knowledge of it. He would have never allowed Jake to fight. Now, to take you back for one moment, November 13th, 1947, the batting odds was 6-5 for Jake. And after rumors beginning to spread across the garden, those odds changed. 11-5 for Billy Fox. 3 hours before the fight, odds changed to 3-1 in favor of Billy Fox. And every 20 minutes or so in Madison Square Garden, a roar would erupt as the rumors continued. Boxing Commissioner Eddie Egan would go back and forth to the dressing room, warning both men about such rumors, and warned them strongly. If these rumors are correct, you will be suspended, your pay would be held until further investigation. When the bell rang, Jake was not his usual self. After not fighting back with Billy Fox for 4 rounds, the referee was stopped the bout. Jake LaMotta was a bloody mess, face full of blood and his eyes were swollen. But he never went down. And the spectators, had thrown everything in the ring. Cups and rubber bands and everything that they had in their hands. Because those won bets and those lost bets. They would never think that Jake LaMotta, who was a very proud Italian fighter out of the Bronx, New York, who represented that city, would be part of such action. And it's amazing because the mob would be behind this, not since the Chicago White Sox versus the Cincinnati Reds in 1919. Would there be such an investigation? Now the mob would clear their name. They went into other entities, and they realized that boxing would be the way to go. Because all you had to do was talk to the fighter and his manager. You didn't have to go through an organization. You didn't need that many alliances in boxing. So Jake LaMotta would walk into Washington, D.C.'s commission meeting. And he would go in with his attorney, John G. Bonami. Jake was 37 years of age and he was questioned by Tennessee Senator Estes Kavaras. And this would take place in 1960. The other senator was Philip Hart. And after hours of testimony, several names would pop up. Names such as Frankie Palermo, Frankie Carbo, Gabriel Ganives. These men would be arrested. Jake LaMotta would state that he would never be allowed Madison Square Garden again. So in 1965, the great Sugar Ray Robinson would retire. And he would be thrown a celebration between all the former middleweights who Sugar Ray Robinson would regain his title from. Names like Carmen Basilio, Carl Bob Olson, Randy Turpin, and Gene Foreman. But the man he actually took the title from, Jake LaMotta, was not allowed in Madison Square Garden. Because there was still some tail-end investigation procedures that were taking place. Jake LaMotta was thrown into the pen for 6 months because he had a club in Miami and he allowed a man to solicit and seduce an underage girl. Jake LaMotta would face Sugar Ray Robinson 6 times, defeating him once. He'd be knocked out by Danny Nardico, who was a light heavyweight. But Jake LaMotta was some defensive fighter. He's very underrated in that area. He could punch, had a ton of heart. And I have him ranked very high in the middleweight division. One of the greatest middleweight champions, of course, of all times. You have to give him that credit. Although he had the title for a short period of time. But he was an outstanding fighter. As for Billy Fox, he was an outstanding fighter, but somewhat of a hype job because he never really proved himself against top level of opposition. And that's a shame. I just wanted to go through the fight that took place November 13th, 1947 in New York's Madison Square Garden with you because every time I think about that fight, I think about what could have been for the great Jake LaMotta. Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to the Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta, and Blackjack, Philadelphia's Billy Fox. Had the mob not been involved in boxing, what kind of fights would we have actually seen? Well, all the fights that didn't materialize happened. But black fighters really get an opportunity that they truly deserve. But fighters like Jake LaMotta have to take dives in order to get an opportunity. That's an open book conversation. But I'll close the chapter on this conversation right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Thanks for your time. Salute.